Hi, I am David Chin, a conductor and Bach enthusiast. Join me as we travel through some of the most important landmarks where Bach had lived and worked.
It's the largest organ in entire Saxony.
What? I will be speaking with scholars, researchers, historians, and directors at various venues where Bach's compositions were first written and performed.
If there is any bad guy in Bach's biography, then it was this guy.
Close looks at some of Bach's original manuscripts to identify his handwriting and discover his compositional process as well as performance practice at the time.
In this movement, Bach uses the juxtaposition of two contrasting ideas from the song text to create two contrasting musical sections. The first line says, "Ich hatte viel Bekümmernis in meinem Herzen. I had much grief in my heart." Here, Bach uses music very similar to the Sinfonia, where dissonances are consistently present. He also uses repeated notes on the main subject to depict the unavoidable sadness and heaviness in the heart.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome for tuning in to this broadcast. I hope everyone who's watching now are all safe at home. Do remember to always wash your hands and maintain social distancing for the time being. My name is Shinyi, and I'll be your host for tonight's program. The reason we are doing this series of programs is because we think this will be able to help in uplifting the spirit of self-isolating at home. This broadcast initiative is helmed by a young team of volunteer musicians training on other non-performance skills for production such as this. Do help us do the polling for your kind feedback, and if you have any questions to ask our guest speaker for tonight's program, you are more than welcome to type them in the Q&A box below. For those who are watching from YouTube Live, do subscribe to our channel and follow our Facebook page. The Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra are very honored to be able to invite Dr. David Chin as our special guest for tonight's program. Known for his charismatic personality and energetic conducting, David Chin has swiftly emerged as one of the rising conductors and musical leaders in the new generation of globe-trotting musicians. He is the founder and artistic director of Bach Fest Malaysia and the conductor of the Malaysia Bach Festival Singers and Orchestra since 2015. He is currently a music faculty at the School of Arts at Sunway University, where he teaches advanced theory, conducting, and conduct the orchestra. As a professor, David has led multiple concert tours, directed high school choral festivals, and taught courses on conducting, music history, ear training, and music appreciation. David has directed numerous choirs and orchestra and collaborated with outstanding musicians from all around the world. His live performances of J.S. Bach's cantatas and Passion have been aired by more than 50 radio stations across the United States, and his original sacred piano arrangements have been broadcast on an international television program. David has won awards in original composition for orchestra and chorus, piano solo, and piano concertos. David holds both the Doctor of Musical Arts and Master of Music degrees from Eastman School of Music, where he was the recipient of Charles W. Kennedy Scholarship and the Herman Gernhardt Choral Conducting Scholar Award, in addition to full scholarship to pursue both degrees. Without further ado, let us welcome Dr. David Chin.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Shinyi.
And good evening.
Good evening.
It's a pleasure and honor to be interviewing you tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So before we start, can you tell us a little bit about the video we just saw in the beginning?
Okay. So I think it was a series of the highlights of the things which I have conducted mainly from the time when I was a doctoral student as a conducting student at the Eastman School of Music, and then leading up all the way to today. And the first scene that you saw is the Mendelssohn Symphony No. 2, and it's probably one of the largest scale concerts that I have ever conducted. I think there were about maybe almost 200 people on stage, and it was my graduating recital. It was very exciting. And then you saw the St. Matthew Passion, which was performed by the Malaysia Bach Festival Singers and Orchestra recently in Kuala Lumpur. And then there was the Bach Harpsichord Concerto, which we did with Ensemble Virama last year. And then you also saw the conductor of your orchestra, Yap Ling. That was our collaboration in I believe it was 2014. That was the first time when we started the East Malaysia Bach Cantata series, which we actually bring 2 cantatas to East Malaysia, the major cities in East Malaysia each year. And we've been doing that for 5 years. And then in the middle of the video, you saw there were some scenes from Germany, and that was actually a documentary series that I started recently, which we went over to Germany and did some filming on the life and the works of Bach. And it's still ongoing series, and we are still in the midst of producing that. And then there were some lecture concerts of Bach, and then don't remember all of them, but then we ended with the B minor Mass, which I think it is the piece which all Bach lovers will take to the island alone if they were to be in a island alone. You know, if one piece that bring with them, it would be the B minor Mass. And I remember also working with Yap Ling on that piece once in East Malaysia. It was in 2017 when he was the concertmaster and I was playing the harpsichord.
So thank you. Okay, so let us move on to the question, shall we?
Sure.
Okay, so Bach is a composer from 18th century. Would you please share with us how his music is relevant to the people in 21st century?
A lot of people, when it comes to Bach, I remember when I was younger, when it comes to Bach, we always think that Bach is outdated, a composer that is only for exam. We only play his pieces because for exam and for audition. But really, the more I look into Bach music, the more I study, especially his music with text. So that would be his cantatas and his passion. You realize that the way that he deliver those messages through music is really unique and really relevant to the people today. And especially if you look at all the cantatas, they're each about 20 to 25 minutes. Each of them is a masterpiece in themselves. And then in each cantata, you realize that there is this profound message that almost seems like the message that we need in our everyday life. It's like a lesson or an advice or something with hope and something with just help us to be a better person. So I think if you really open your heart to Bach's music, you realize that, and you realize that his music is so profound in the way that you don't have to really dig deep in Bach's music, although it is like unlimited pit. You can just keep going deeper and deeper. But on the surface already, you hear that his music is beautiful. And if you pay attention, Bach's music actually being used a lot in movie soundtracks, in some very famous movies. And also then if you really study Bach's music, then you realize that it is just absolutely so profound. It's very emotional, but at the same time also mathematical. So it's basically Bach's music is everything, I think.
Okay, so moving on. Do you conduct Bach's music differently from the way you conduct works by other composers? How is Baroque music different from other periods in general?
Interesting. So I was teaching conducting recently, and I was telling one of my students, and we were actually working on the music of Brahms. We were working on Brahms' Requiem. And then both of us had a short conversation, has a short discussion, and then we suddenly realized something in that when we always thought that when we play, when we perform, or in this case, when we conduct music of Bach, we always have to play and perform them a very rigid way because there's no forte and piano written on the score, and we must not use the pedal, and we must always play very strictly in time. No rubato, unlike the music, I suppose Beethoven or Brahms or Chopin, where the rubato is used a lot, and especially because we know the Brahms wrote a lot of Humula and all that, so we have to be. But as we looked at Brahms' Requiem, and any of Brahms' work really, actually all the expressive elements such as ritardando, such as crescendo, diminuendo, not only that they are indicated on the score, but actually sometimes they are written into the music. For example, if Brahms really wants us to feel that the music is slowing down, you will see that, for example, in a passage, you will see that he will start with quavers and then coming down to crotchets, and then there would be it will be minims coming down to crotchets, and then with quavers, and then let me just start again. It actually start with quavers, and then coming down to crotchet, and then coming down to minim, and then semi-brief. And that's how he write a ritardando instead of just telling you, here is ritardando. So in a sense, I think when we perform romantic periods music, actually a lot of the expressive elements, they are already written in the music. So in other words, as performers, we don't have to actually do that much. We don't have to, because if we do more, for example, if I listen to a recording of Brahms, sometimes I'll feel like, oh, it is slowing down here. But is it really the tempo slowing down? But actually, or is actually Brahms is just writing it in the way that makes us feel that it is slowing down, but the tempo is remain the same. Tempo remain the same. It's just that the note value gets longer and longer, give us a feeling of slowing down. So if Brahms already written in something that makes you feel that it's going slower. I mean, this is the same with Beethoven, with Chopin, with all these romantic composer, Schubert, Schumann. Then if they already written the slowing down into the music, then I don't think we need to do that much. If we slow it down further, then it will become really, really slow and it will become exaggerating. However, if you look at Baroque music, on the other hand, most of the time, these slowing down, getting louder, getting softer, or adding ornaments, or adding monos, all these kind of things, they are all not written in the music. So in other words, when we play or when we sing a music of the Baroque era, actually, we are expected to do more because we know that nowadays with research and all that, we know that the performers at the time, they were expected to do more. We grown up being taught by teachers saying that we have to play exactly what is on the page, follow what the composer write on the page. But when it comes to Baroque music, it's really not that case. It is about what is not on the page. So for example, if you look at Telemann Violin Concerto, if you just play what is on the page, especially if you do the original edition, you will feel like it's a very boring piece of music. Because what he does is he just write out a skeleton and he expects you to fill in a lot of other notes in between the notes that he had written, so that it is exciting, it is different each time. It is a little bit similar to the jazz music today, where every time you listen, you perform, is different. So that is the connection that I think we could draw with jazz music. But so coming back to the topic, when we have to conduct a piece of Baroque music, it is quite different the way that I would work with the orchestra or the singers. Because with Baroque music, it is more important that you have lots and lots of fresh ideas that you can provide for the musicians, but the musicians themselves, they would also have to bring their best to the table. So they have to bring their ideas, their ornaments and all that, which doesn't happen quite so much with the romantic music or classical music. And I think the biggest thing, some of the elements that are really different with playing romantic music and Baroque music is that if you're string players, I don't know, Srini, are you a string players or are you a pianist or?
I'm a violist.
You're a violist, okay.
Ah.
You know, with playing, I had 2 years of violin, so I don't know so much about string, but I know the basics. A lot of time we like to use a lot of vibrato, so that most of the time, actually, when we do something wrong or when we want to cover up our mistakes, we would do a lot of vibrato to cover up, or that kind of things. So it's a joke, like it's like opera singers, when they do Italian opera, they could do whatever they want and holding longer and all that. But playing Baroque music and singing Baroque music, really vibrato is like it's just an ornament. It was not used throughout the piece. It was used only one time or maybe none at all throughout the entire piece. So I think when I have to work with musicians who have not have a lot of opportunity to play Baroque music, but now I have to work with them a piece of Baroque music, then I think I have to indicate very clearly on the score, I want this note to be longer, this note to be shorter, where should be forte, where should be piano. And so in a sense that I feel very fulfilled as a conductor of Baroque music, because that you can really bring your own interpretation to the performance, as I suppose conducting something with already a lot of expression markings written in.
Thank you. Okay, so how has your experience been in bringing Bach's music to Malaysia? Could you perhaps share some challenges which you have encountered and how did you overcome them?
Okay, so the first time that I conduct Bach in Malaysia was 2014. And actually, I'm not the first one who do Bach music in Malaysia. There have been some other people conducting and performing Bach music in Malaysia. However, I had the privilege and opportunities to bring Bach music to many places where, I mean, in general, classical music have not been performed, let alone Bach music. So it is always very interesting to see, to feel the audience, how they react to the performance. And I think we have, as people who, citizens who lived in the cities, we have so many pre-assumptions already that brainwash us, telling us that classical music is boring, classical music is not as cool as popular music, that kind of thing. So I think we always go into a classical concert, especially those who are not musicians, we already have some sort of pre-assumption that, oh, this is going to be boring and this is going to be, you know, that kind of thing. But I have had the opportunity to bring music, classical music and Bach music to places really people have zero preconceptions about anything about music. They just go into the concert hall and then they just open their heart and really receptive about what we were going to share with them. And you realize that it is a very interesting experience to see how much they actually accept and can understand and they can feel in classical music as audience. For example, last year, we had the privilege of bringing Bach's St. Matthew Passion to a city of Muar in Johor, and it is a city which is 2 hours away from Kuala Lumpur. And we, you know, when we were going to bring this music to Muar, our worry would be like, okay, these people in Muar, we were told that there have been no classical music at all in the past, I don't know, many years that there have no classical music performances. So then we are bringing St. Matthew Passion, which is a German work that's almost 3 hours long, to this people who have never listened to classical music before. Of course, we will be, at first we worry that, okay, the ticket is not going to sell very well because people don't know what is St. Matthew Passion, you know, they're not going to buy tickets to come to listen. But surprisingly, the tickets were sold out. And the attendance one night in Muar was more, and this is the picture that you're seeing on screen now. This is our performance in Muar. Yeah. The attendance in Muar one night is more than the total attendance we have in KL for 2 nights. And of course, then we would be like, well, they bought the tickets because it is new, it is something that I've never experienced before. So they were just curious. They just want to come and, you know, just like a social event, not really for the music. So we didn't really trust them. So concert day came, the concert hall was packed. And so there were many people. The hall was filled. And we were like, you know what? People are going to leave halfway through the concert. During the intermission, we were worrying that half of the hall is going to be clear. There will be much less people because we think that they will not appreciate the music. So we have so little faith, you know, with these people. Surprisingly, after the intermission, I think we heard the usher told us only 4 people left, which means most of the people stay back. And then when the concert comes to an end, you know, in a small city like Muar, people go to bed really early, like maybe 9:30 at night and all that. Our concert went over 10 p.m. So it was, by the time the concert finishes, I think it was about 10:15. Everyone stayed and we got 5 curtain calls. Oh. And I mean, that was really something, you know, for a place like that. And then the first feedback that we heard after the concert, interestingly, someone who is actually a Buddhist came to this concert. He had never listened to Bach before. He doesn't know anything about St. Matthew Passion, but we saw on his Facebook page that he said that after listening to St. Matthew Passion, I felt like the way I understand Christ's suffering has been really shallow in the past, for my entire life. And Bach's music helped me to really understand what Christ's suffering is like. I mean, coming from a Buddhist, and this is really something that shocked me, because most of the time you think that people will just say, oh, the concert was great, the orchestra was great, and the singers was great, they dressed really nicely. You will feel like they will not, learn about, really listen to the message. But for this Buddhists, 50 years of Buddhists who have never been to any concert by Bach and have such response, I think that Bach's music really not only speak to the people of his time, but also speak to the people in 21st century. So in that sense, I think it's very fulfilling. It's very fulfilled. But at the same time, when Bach Fest Malaysia first started, Malaysia Bach Festival's singers and orchestra, we have always tried to perform in the way that is historical informed. That means that we try to perform in the way that we think what Bach would have performed in the past. So we all know that Bach's music is always performed by a small group of people. So the choirs, his choir, maximum 3 singers per part. And in his letters, in his writing, that's what he asked for. And for strings, it's the same: 2 to 3 first violin, 2 to 3 second violins, and then 1 oboe and all that. And this is quite different from the big symphonic concert that we are used to, that we think that, a masterpiece should be performed by 200 people, 300 people. But when it comes to Bach music, it's really not that way. So when we first trying to do that in Malaysia, that is the first for us to perform Bach music with such a small force. We got some really bad feedback from people, and actually not feedback, more like gossip, and very sadly, these are the people who call themselves musicians, who call themselves professional musicians. Actually, I think they are. But when they see this is how Malaysia Bach Festival singers and orchestra perform, they actually criticize us for using such small forces. And when you are confronted with situation like this, when you know that what you're doing is actually right, is scholarly, is informed and all that, but then there are professional musicians who actually think that, these are not the right way to do Bach. It's really sad that you see that they're not supportive of you and all that. But all in all, I think it has been a great experience, and I'm very excited to be hoping to have the opportunities to bring Bach's music to more people, especially for those who have never listened or heard Bach's music performed before.
Thank you. That was an amazing story.
Thank you.
Okay, so so moving on, what is your definition of a successful conductor? What are the basic requirements of a conductor?
So I think, we have many successful conductors in the world that we can really name them, and a few famous one nowadays would be the symphonic conductor. So, for example, Simon Rattle, who was the conductor of Berlin Philharmonic for a long time, and then of course a young conductor like Dudamel, who is the artistic director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra. And of course, in Bach's world, there are many other conductors like Suzuki, Ton Koopman, and all these people. I think when you try to find a common character, a common attitude among all the good conductors that I know, that I have met, or I have the really privilege to work with, is that they never seems to feel like they have arrived, or they never think of themselves of being successful. Because I think for us musicians, the more we explore, the more we grow, the more we learn, actually we will realize that the more we don't know and the more we need to learn and grow. And I think as a conductor, you not only that you need to be a good musician yourself, so you should be either a good player, a good singer. So you should have mastered an instrument that you are able to express through that instrument, whether it be your own voice or an instrument. But at the same time, music aside, I think a conductor really needs to be also a very effective leader. And when you ask what is an effective and successful leader, I think that's everything. Basically, leadership includes that. Do you have empathy for people, and are you good with working with people? Are you generally, are you a good leader? Can you be inspired? Are you an inspiring person? So to me, a good leader, a good conductor, you should not you should not motivate your singers and your orchestra members through fear, because I think fear driven is not something that is inspiring. So if your musicians feel like they are doing you a favor, then I think you fail, because they're actually pity on you, they're trying to help you. But I think a good conductor is the one who makes their members feel like it is a privilege to be working with them, and that at the same time they want to do well, they want to play and they want to sing well, not because of the conductor, because they want to. So I think that is very important as a conductor. How do you inspire the people really to want to do well themselves instead of making them to do well? So there are many other things, but this is my short answer.
Okay, thank you so much. So how would you describe the relationship between the conductor and the choir or orchestra, since you have experience in choral conducting and orchestral conducting? So how would you describe the relationship?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
You have experience in choral and orchestral conducting. So how would you describe the relationship between the conductor and the choir or the orchestra?
So part of it, I think I have already mentioned. Basically, you have to be an inspiration, and you want to inspire your member to do well, not because of you, but because they want to by themselves. But I think when you mention choral and orchestral conducting, to me, it is very interesting. Sometimes I read people's bio, they will label themselves, I am a choral conductor, or I am an orchestral conductor. But to me, a good conductor, you should be able to really conduct any genre, any style. And we live in a society where people like to, and we like to put ourselves, and people like to put us into this little compartment. For example, I have never, from day one, I've never called myself a Bach specialist or call myself a Bach conductor. But for some reason, people just like to put you in the box when you do that a little bit more. To me, personally, the way you conduct a choir and an orchestra should be same. It's good conducting. Just like people will ask, what's the difference between singing solo and choral singing? Of course, there are many different styles of singing, different styles of conducting, but I think that the technique, the basic, the fundamentals thing should be the same. So a good conducting is good conducting. So I think that, however, there are some differences between the way you work with an orchestra and choir. For example, most of the time, if you are working with a professional orchestra, usually they have less rehearsal. So, for example, if you have a choir, you work with them maybe every week, maybe for 12 weeks until the performance, and then the orchestra will come in and kind of accompany it. So those are the difference between community groups and professional groups. But I think that it should be equal, that singers should also be professional and not expected that, oh, we have more time, or or things like that. So I think that ultimately the good conducting is good conducting. There's not such a big difference between choral conducting and orchestral conducting, but I do think that there are different styles, different approach. But as far as choral and orchestra, I think a better question to ask is, how do you conduct a certain style, a certain genre, instead of whether or not you conduct choir and orchestra.
Okay, so moving on. What is the greatest challenge you have ever encountered, and how did you overcome it?
Wow. I think one of the things, and this is something that is quite personal. I think growing up, there's always for me, there's always a sense that that I can only speak for myself personally. Um, I want to seek for affirmation from other people. So I always want people to affirm that I'm doing well, or I always look for compliments or affirmation or encouragement and all that kind of things. But the more and more I grow and learn, I find that that is not the purpose at all, and that is not the thing that we should be looking for and asking for when we do music. Because I think when the moment when we allowed ourselves to let other people's opinions or decisions or their words to affect us, then I think we have given them the right to control us as a human, and more so as an artist, because I think who you are as a human reflects who you are as an artist, and the music that you make. So I think that the biggest lesson I've learned is through this very short time that I was actually having a job in the States, in a very small town in the United States. And the entire town was about 4,000 people, including the students in the university. So there were no good restaurants and made no friends. I was there for only 4 months, but it was a very, very long 4 months. And during that time, I felt really lonely, and I felt very depressed and sad, because I starting to question my future, starting to question myself, what am I doing here? Although I have to tell you that that was the time when I was making the most money. It was the most well-paid job I ever had. It's almost twice as much as the job that I had before and the job I had after. So, but I was not happy because but I'm very grateful for the time that I have, that I was really lonely, that I was able to confront and to face my own fear and feelings, because that was the time when I realized that, really, as an artist, as a human being, we should live our own life, and we should make our own music, and we should not really live our life based on how other people look at us. Of course, I'm not saying that we are not taking any advice from people, or we are not learning from other people. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I think that ultimately we need to know very well that when we do badly, we need to know ourselves. When we do something that's really well, when we do very well, we should know that. We shouldn't have to have other people to tell us that, wow, you did really well, good job, or wow, you did really bad, and that we take that word and apply to us. So I think it is very important that we are independent human beings, so that we could be independent artists who deliver unique musical message to other people. It's not like just I'm performing something that I heard from a recording, or I'm just learning from this person. I'm playing and conducting exactly like this person. So I think that's out of the point. I think we need to really be ourselves. And one way to really overcome all these fears and all that is that to learn how to find fulfillment, not from the affirmation of other people, but through the works that we do. So that's what I have learned recently.
Thank you for that. That was very inspiring. So before we move on to the Q&A, I would
Sure.
like to show you these two pictures, and maybe like ask you two questions about it.
Okay.
So the first picture, what is your opinion on learning Baroque music? Is it like learning classical music, like Back to the Future? Like,
Well, I think Bach is so unique in the sense that, why do we call him the father of music? Because the music that he wrote during his time is basically included all the styles that for 1,500 years, 1,500 years before him. The chant, the Renaissance polyphony, all the way to the most popular style during his time. He was able to combine all those elements into his music. And not just that, after he died, we know that Haydn and Mozart look back to Bach. Beethoven, the big master, looked back to Bach. And Mendelssohn revived Bach music. So if we go to the Western tradition, it's almost no one composer who is famous that did not look back and study Bach's music. And even to some some composers that we think that were absolutely different, far away from Bach, like Schoenberg. This afternoon, I'm working on some analysis of Schoenberg, his first 12-tone piece, and because I'm gonna teach that tomorrow to my students, and I can show you actually. Let me share my screen with you. So this is the work that I'm working on. And you can see it's nothing like Bach, but you see even Schoenberg in one of his earliest 12-tone piece, which is this very famous Opus 25, and this is the Prelude number 1. And first of all, Prelude, this is a piano suite, basically looks back to Baroque, because in Baroque music, we know that many of the instrumental music, they are composed in the style of a dance suite, and the first one usually is a prelude. And as you can see, in his 12-tone already, he kind of hide Bach's name in there, HCAB, and which is BACH, So B natural in German usually is Ach, so in German we call them H. And so you can already see how even Schoenberg, even the second Viennese school, even this very forward-looking composer, pay homage to Bach. So, and I also know that there's a very famous composer at Eastman School of Music, where I got my master's and doctorate. He write many atonal music, many avant-garde music, but we know that what does he do during the summer? He would just take Bach's chorale and Bach's the wild template clavier, just to practice that on the piano as a composer, to continue to find fresh ideas from Bach. So I think that definitely Bach to the future. So Bach is not just an outdated composer, but also a composer of the future.
So JPO has been doing some outreach program. Can you give us advice or any, what is your opinion on our outreach program?
I'll do that, but this is a funny picture.
Okay. So let us move on to this one.
Well,
so,
okay, I think, well, as a conductor, I can say that there have been times in the past when I was a student, really, I was thinking, can you really fake it to make it? But sometimes I feel very bad because conductor is the only person that do not make a sound on stage. You basically just wave your arm and everyone else do the job. Of course, we know that there's more to it, but when it comes to the performance, really, it's not up to you, but up to the your musicians, unless you are conducting from a harpsichord or something like Bach. And to be honest, sometimes you have to learn how to fake it and make it. But however, I have to say this, I have heard from a teacher one time, she said that even to be able to fake, that itself is a gift. Not everyone can fake, So I think that, so fake it until you make it to a certain level. I think that is correct. I mean, when you learn singing, you always try to imitate your teacher and you always try to fake, and then one day you get it. But this is not the only way that we should learn music. Of course, all the fundamentals, basic, those are important. So you were asking me about advice to the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra?
Yes.
And I'm very impressed with, I have been very impressed with the work that Maestro Yap Ling does with the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra. And I think that you are doing wonderful, especially with all the outreach, all the things like that. But I think I'll just leave you with one thing. as orchestral members, usually we only learn our parts and learn them well, and then perform them. But one time I was visiting Japan. I went to a high school to observe their alumni orchestra rehearsal, and this is just a high school alumni orchestra, not a professional orchestra. One thing strikes me is when everyone walked in, a cellist or violist or horn player, whoever, they all have their instruments at the back, and then one hand they are holding their musical parts. On the other hand, they're holding a study score, a full score, a conductor score, a study score. That tells me that they're not only learning their own line, but they actually, when they play their own line, they have already studied what is going on in the entire orchestra. And I think that it taught me a great lesson that as a professional musician, you really should treat every rehearsal, every performance like the last performance of your life. And as I have told my students one time, don't think that audition is only on audition days. Actually, every day is an audition. People are always watching. You don't know who is watching you, who is actually, looking at what you do and all that. So every day is an audition. And so music path is not an easy one, but because it is not an easy one, so you will find it more fulfilling when you do it. So I think that everyone should continue to work hard and to do as well as they can as a musician.
Thank you. So let us move on to the Q&A session.
Okay.
So this is from YouTube Live. It's from Mr. Liang Seng.
Mhm.
Do you have plan to conduct Lok Gesang in Malaysia?
Lok Gazang is the first work that came out on the video. I don't know, maybe sometime soon, hopefully, we'll have the opportunity.
Okay, so another question from YouTube Live. It's from Yu En Eng.
Yuan is our musician from Malaysia Bach Festival.
Oh, okay. So he said, in Baroque interpretation, you mentioned bringing in fresh ideas to the score. Where do you get your inspiration from for these ideas?
Well, obviously, we do not have the recordings from Bach's time, and we do not have. It would be very scary. It would be very nice if we do. Unfortunately, we don't. So I think so we could only go around recording sources. So we would read a lot of the treatises, the letters from Bach's time, before and after. Thankfully, many treatises have survived until our day, where actually the composer or the musicologist at the time, they would actually write out, and some even write out a big chart. When you see a certain note, here are the things that is possible for you to do and all that. So I think all these written documents, and thankfully today, I think we are living in the best time yet to do this kind of music, because there are so many authoritative scholars, musicians out there, that they are constantly producing Baroque music with historical informed practice, and also with their own fresh ideas as our references. So I think that first of all, we need to try to study as much as we can according to the treatises, what are the things we could possibly do, and then at the same time, then learn the music history and all that. And that's why we have to learn music history when we go to college, and because it actually helped us with our performance. And then listen to all these recordings, see what other people are doing. And then for myself, honestly, I always listen to many different recordings, and I love particularly choosing the recording that is different from other interpreters. So I always try to listen to what they do, and then to try to implement it in my performance, not necessarily the same piece, but in some other pieces that I perform. And so when you do it over and over and over again, then eventually you will start developing your own ideas and your own ways of coming up with ornaments, because I think to me that is a kind of language. when it comes to Baroque music. You know, just like Malaysia, when do you put la? When do you put la? You know, and when do you put le? When do you put le? You know, all these things it becomes our language. We improvise every day without thinking, okay, I should put le when I finish this sentence, and I should put la when I finish this sentence. We don't think about it. But it is also not a treatise, you know, it's just something that we have done over and over again so that we get used to the language. So I think treatises, a lot of recording, and then your own ideas.
Okay, thank you. So this is from YouTube Live again. It's from Miss Chow Yan Ching. How do you arrange the sitting position in the orchestra?
There's no one way to arrange sitting position in the orchestra. I mean, we know the most standard, I mean, depends what piece you are doing. So I have done many different ways. The only ways I have not tried is the European way, where you have your first violin on the conductor left, and then you have the second violin on the conductor right. I have not done that yet. I mean, that is kind of like a string quartet way of sitting. Usually I just do first violin, second violin, viola, and cello, double bass, and all that. But I have done many different ways, especially with Bach's music. You have to look at the composition. Sometimes if the oboe has a lot of doubling with the violins, then you want to place them as close as possible so that they are able to listen to each other, to play together with each other. Or so sometimes you consider about the position of the singers. So how should you place the instrumentalist? Because sometimes, most of the time, the instrumentalists are doubling the singers. So there's no one way. So you just do it according to the space, according to the demand of the music, of the composition.
Okay, thank you. This is from YouTube Live again. It's from Caleb Wu.
My good friend.
Oh, hello. Okay, so why enjoying cuisines is so important to an artist?
Well, first of all, I think so. He asking cuisine, like food, right? I think many good musicians, good composers, and especially Bach, we know that they are food lovers. I mean, you can see from the receipt that Bach have in restaurant, you know what kind of food that he had ordered and what kind of things that he brings. Many composers are also food lovers, and not just in general, but they want to eat good food. Let me tell you why. For example, a food that is very well prepared, like the dish that my mom prepared for us tonight. It is the tongpo. And why is tongpo like siu yok and all that char siu that all so great? Because I think that you can find some similarity between food and music. For example, when you listen to a piece of music, usually I like the contrapunto music, I like Baroque music because they're meant different layers. So I think a good plate of usually gives you a few of different layers. For example, if you eat siu yok, you start with the crispiness of the skin of the pork, and then there's the that's my dinner. I said that. So there's the crispiness of the skin of the pork, and then there's the fat that melts into your mouth, and then at the end you have to work to chew the meat to really savor the juice of the meat and all that, and eventually then you swallow it. So there's this layers, like a three movement, you know, eating a bowl of good dishes. It has layers. So
Okay. Okay. So another question from YouTube Live. It's from Chris Yak.
Hi, Chris.
Wait.
Chris is a violinist in Cebu, I believe.
Oh, okay. Which part in the conducting job do you think happens to be the most challenging part? Is it the score analysis, background research, or conveying ideas during rehearsal with fellow musicians?
Wow. I think once again, I think the most challenging job for a conductor is how do you successfully transfer the sound that you hear in your mind to the concept and convince your members that they're able to make the sound that is in your mind. And this sound that is in your mind, hopefully, after a lot of research and analysis, is the sound hopefully closer to the composer's intention. So, I mean, I always think that it's always very moving when you conduct a piece, because if you think about it, composer, they also, from their mind, they have this sound in their mind, and then they try to write it down on a piece of paper, okay? And then that paper comes down to us after many hundred years. And then we, conductor, looking at the piece of paper, we have to imagine the sound that was in the mind of the composer. And then we have to transfer this sound to the players and to the singers. And then they have to make it happen. And if you are able to successfully do that, I mean, it's very moving. That means that Bach is dead, but he lives because of that, because his music lives, because we are able to do that. So I think it's very moving experience. So I think the most challenging thing is, first of all, it's very important for a conductor to have very strong idea. This idea could be original. This idea could be based on research, based on study, but you have to have a very strong idea. If a conductor do not have a strong idea, then why would you even become a conductor? Because you have nothing to speak, you have nothing to say. So conductor must first have a strong idea. Exactly, they have to know exactly where this music is going, what kind of sound they're looking for, and then trying to convey that to the members through their conducting techniques, rehearsal techniques, and have the members bring it to life.
Okay. So this is from YouTube Live again. It's from Mr. Peter Gunawan. Do you have any advice and strategies on score study to prepare rehearsal?
So this is a broad question. I try to answer it as short as I can. So first of all, conductor, we need to really understand and really know the score. Not only because of the music, but just if you say just for the sake of the rehearsal, you need to know the structure of the entire work if you are conducting a longer work. Then you need to be able to identify which are the parts that are very, very challenging for singers, for players, and then to be able to rehearse them effectively. I mean, there's no one method to analyze the score. But for me, usually I will start with looking from the big picture and then going to the small picture. Usually I will look at the major structure of the piece. Maybe the A section going to this big B section and then going to maybe repeat the A section and then going to C section. Then within the section, I would dig in and see, okay, how many phrases are there and are there any subsections? And then do harmonic analysis. I mean, ultimately it comes down to this. If you are conducting a choral piece, are you able to sing the parts of the singers? If you are not able to sing, or if it is a difficulty for you, it is probably also a challenge for your singers. So then you will have to come up with methods. So conductors are also problem solvers. So we have to come up with solutions to help our members how to overcome the difficulties. You see, a lot of conductors, or teachers, usually they just like to scold people. When things goes wrong, they will just yell at the singers. They will yell at the orchestra. How come you play like this? How come you sing like this? You know? And then they will just keep yelling at the singers. You are so bad. You're not a good singer. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I have a student like you. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed to have you in my group. Blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of the day, after half a day, you realize that they have only scolded the members, but they didn't give them any solution. And there are teachers like that I have encountered myself, that they will just scold you and scold you and scold you and expect you to come up with a solution. So I see some poor singers and some poor members, sometimes they just sit there and being yelled at and being scolded. All they want perhaps is maybe one solution that can help them to do better immediately. So I think it's very important that conductors, we have to have a toolbox full of solution tools. So when this doesn't work, then we have to pull out another tool to help them to see how we can help them to solve the problem. We are there not just we are not just a cheerleader, but we are there to help the musicians to solve problems and help them to do better. So.
Okay, thank you. So this is from the Q&A box. What do you find is the balance point between performing Bach on period instruments versus modern instruments? This is from Mr. Kenneth Chia.
Oh, okay. Hi, Kenneth. First of all, one reality question you have to ask, what kind of instruments do you have? I mean, for Bachfest Malaysia, for Malaysia Bach Festival Singers and Orchestra, for example, we do not have so many Baroque instruments that we can have a complete orchestra with period instruments yet. So right now, what we're doing is we're using modern instruments, and for strings players, most of the time we use Baroque bow, and Baroque bowing, and to try our best to play in style as much as possible. And I have heard many conductors of Baroque music, many authorities, they have said that there's no way that you could not do something on a modern instrument that you could on a Baroque instrument. Although it is much harder, is more difficult, but it is possible. So that is exactly what we are doing in Malaysia. Basically, we are performing as much, we are playing in the style as much as possible in the Baroque style, as much as possible to make it sound like we are using a period instrument while we are not. So of course, if we have the options using Baroque instruments to play Bach piece or using a modern instrument to play Bach piece, I think most likely we will go for the Baroque instruments. But one conductor that I've said, also a very famous conductor, he said before, well, Baroque instruments were created for Baroque people. And Baroque people, the way they listen is completely different from the way we listen, you know? So our ears is used to larger sound and the kind of thing. So at the end of the day, I would just summarize it in this. Also from a British conductor that I have encountered. This is what he said: read all the books you want, know all the things, and then do what you want to do.
Thank you for the advice and the answer. Okay, so this next question is from Yan Yao. Hey David, you have managed to put on some amazing productions. Could you talk about your motivations and how you go about this colossal task? As a conductor, what do you think about performances practice?
Sorry, I didn't get the last part.
As a conductor, what do you think about performance practice?
Well, I have mentioned earlier about performance practice, so I think the question was asked before I addressed it. But I think, first of all, you shouldn't think of it as a colossal task. So for me, honestly, it's very simple. I love Bach music, and I love music in general, and I want to share it. That's it. And many people, this is something that I would like to share with also our audience. In our Chinese culture, we have always taught that, don't show off, don't try to, show off so much. You must always be, humble and all. To me, there's showing off and being humble are two different things. I think it is very important for us to realize today that, I have been accused by so many people saying that, oh, David Chin, he always know how to promote himself. He really like how to promote himself. And to me, I think I take those as a compliment, because I think as musicians, if you don't have the desire to really share your music with other people, why do you even become a musician? You could just practice in a practice room for 7 and 8 hours a day. But if you have no desire to share that with other people, why do you want to become a performer? And if you are a performer, you should be proud of your work. You should be excited about the things that you do. But a lot of people has very funny mentality. they love the thing so much, but then I don't want to share it. I feel so shy, you know, later people call me proud and then think that I show off. I'm like, come on, if you really like the music, if you don't share with other people, you are selfish. A true musician, who really passionate about what they love, which is music, and passionate about music, they will share it. They will do all they can to share it with other people and not to keep it with themselves. And that's a very selfish act, you know? So, I mean, to me, what the heck? And people can call you, you know, people can name call you whatever. I have been name called by so many different people. But at the end of the day, know exactly your clear motive is that you love music and you want to share music. That's it. I think that's what kept me going. That's what kept me pushing me forward and to do what I do, is that I really want to share what I love with other people, because enjoying it alone is very boring.
So, so the last question for tonight before we end. This is from Mr. Kenneth Jeff. What advice do you have for musicians who would want to learn proper Baroque improvisation and performance practice?
Well, if you ask me these questions 10 years, 20 years ago, I might say that I have no idea, except that you fly over to Europe and study it. But I have learned from my friends, like, you know, like Yuan, just now, the guy that asked the questions, and also my friend Hailin and many other people in Malaysia, they are not, they're not full-time musician. I mean, one is a business owner and the other one is an editor. But they just love music and they're instrumentalists. And I think they just do a lot of research online, and listening to a lot of musicians, trying to learn the way how they're playing, how they play, how they perform. I mean, for me myself, I never really go to school for 3 or 4 years just to learn Baroque music. Actually, in my doctoral studies, there's only one concert is Bach. All my other concerts are not Bach music. And but I learn from my experience, from doing it, from listening, from talking to musicians sometimes. So I think today we have no excuse. There are many information available online, including all those treaties that I have mentioned earlier. There are books written about Baroque performance practice, many books that I think that we have the privilege to access to. So I would say listen to a lot of good recordings, read a lot of books, and then do what you want, as I was once being advised before.
Thank you for the answer. So, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of tonight's program. So, on behalf of JPO, we would like to thank Dr. David Chin for dedicating your time and energy by joining us for tonight's program.
And
We
thank you.
would also, okay, welcome. We would also like to thank the attendees that have tuned in for tonight's program. You guys have been awesome. I hope you guys learned as much as I had. And for those who are waiting for your questions to be answered, do stay as Dr. Chin will type out the answers in the Q&A section box below for you. If you want to rewatch tonight's and previous programs, video recording of tonight's broadcast will be available on our YouTube channel, which is Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra Media. Do leave a like and subscribe for any upcoming program. Now, Dr. Chin will lead the prayer. Please pray in whatever faith you believe in.
So we're praying for the COVID-19.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So join us if you are a man of faith. So, dear Creator of the world and our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the gift of music, for the gift of life, even during this time as we are going through this pandemic. It is more than ever that we learn how to trust you with faith, how to trust you by just turning our eyes to you. And Lord, we thank you for giving us all the things we need in our life. And we pray especially for those who are right now suffering from the virus. Also praying for those who are working tirelessly to help rebuilding our country and also the world. We pray that you will be with them and you will help them to realize your mercy and your grace. And we are grateful for the opportunity you have given to us, and help us to even inspire us during this time, and help us to realize what we can do as individual citizens, human beings, and even musicians to be able to contribute to help with this pandemic. And Lord, we thank you for everything you have given to us. Thank you for this time. And we pray for your peace and your blessing and your love. We pray all this in your son's precious name. Amen.
Once again, thank you for joining us and
Thank you.
sharing with us. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
And to the attendees, we hope you had a wonderful experience. Tomorrow night, we'll have Miss Chong Ying Zing as our guest speaker. And that's all for tonight. Stay home, stay safe, and good night. Bye.